Why, hello, hello, hello. Once again, it's your guy. It's the coach, Ty A. And I'm here with my rib unit, the most beautiful, the most intelligent attorney at law that I know, my wife.
Hey, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Once again, we want to sit down like we promised. We're going to do more of these videos, really just to help those of you who are experiencing this homeschooling thing as a shock to the system. Always want to give you encouragement, and one of the ways to encourage and to keep you ready is to also give you tools that will help you so that you can relax, relate, release. So, the title of our talk today, we wanted to tell you that, hey, it's time to swim.
Yay!
It's time to swim. Last week was the first week for many of you as you were just kind of thrown into the deep end with no swimming lessons and really no one even standing aside to make sure that you didn't drown. And guess what? You survived. You survived. You made it. I saw a lot of people doing a lot of different things. You know, they were playing games with their kids, strategy games, or doing Legos, all these things. And all these things are great. Those are great activities that you should continue as you continue with your homeschooling program. But for a lot of you, you will have some concerns, and some of you are ready to start getting back and getting more into the curriculum to make sure that your child continues the learning process. You don't want to wait to see if schools open up again, because like they told us here in California, more than likely they're done for the school year. So you don't want to sit around waiting, and you want to get back into the curriculum, but maybe you're a little bit hesitant. Maybe you're a little bit cautious. Maybe you have some concerns. We want to address some of those that we've heard so far.
Yes.
So what do you think?
I think this is a good time to identify where your children are. It's, we had a week maybe of trying to make them comfortable with the new situation. And so they're probably ready for more this week just because to get back into a routine of school.
And that's the big thing, it's the routine. It's hard when you change up kids' routine. A lot of times, and there are some school methods out there, some systems where they say kids don't like structure, and they think they perform better when they have less structure. There's another frame of thought where your kids perform better where they know what to expect. And right now, your kids are going through a big change because it's altered what they've come to expect on a daily basis. So you want to make sure you keep that in mind as you start delving and diving back into the curriculum.
Right.
This isn't something that you need to rip the Band-Aid off and you need to go from sitting to a full sprint.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that you might want to ease into a little bit more as you get your kid back into the school mode and mindset of doing and completing schoolwork and working through their curriculum.
Right. And kids are different, and you know your child and you know what works best for them. Because sometimes you might have a child that got used to the routine of the school, and so you just might find out ask your child, like, what did you guys do first? And maybe you sang a song, maybe you did like some type of opening, and then maybe you could ease into that structure and then ease out of it, because homeschool is about home. And many homeschool parents, they don't do like that structured school setting because they want to keep it home. So it depends on what the family wants, and we're not advocating either way. We do what we do, and we're happy to share that way.
I guess the biggest thing is we want to encourage you to find out what works best for you, your family, and for your children. At our home, we have multiple learning locations. There's not one set place where they feel like they have to go sit down and do their work.
Right.
But they also do have places where they kind of have a desk and have a chair, and their books are in one place, so they know where to go get their resources. They know where they can go sit down if they want to go sit down at a desk or at a table. If they want to go lay out in our family room, they go lay out in our family room. But they do know and they do have where they can and where learning happens in the home. Right. It's important that many of you identify that in your home just so your kids understand. And then you can also make sure the family respects this is a learning environment, because every room in the house isn't going to be the same. And your kids will need places where they can go and let energy off, and they need places where they can go and they can focus and they can get to the curriculum or to any type of reading or assignments or work that they might have and want to accomplish that day. Two difficulties that we want to address today. Two, and one of them that we were actually asked, thank you very much for your input and your questions. Please feel free to give us more. But two difficulties that some of you might be facing. And the first one is that maybe your kids just aren't really self-motivated self-learners yet. Yet. Because we do not believe that they cannot become self-motivated learners in quick time. But if they're not there yet, that may be a difficulty that you're facing. And as a parent, you're like, how do I get my kid to want to do this work? So we have a few ideas that we want to share with you. There is no magical solution that we can tell you, but we have some ideas that we use and that have worked for us over the time, and is different with our two different kids. Our kids, even though they come from the same people, they're completely different learners.
Right. And there was one time where we actually had a extra kid who would come over after school, and just working with him for a little while, he became motivated. He would come into the house, he'd get a book, he'd lay on the floor. But that also helped because he saw our kids doing it. So he was modeling their behavior. But, we took a kid who didn't come as self-motivated, and in maybe 2-3 weeks, he did become self-motivated, and his teacher even noticed a difference in him in the classroom.
So one of the simpler ways to do it is the reward process. You want to tie something into what the kids actually want to do versus what they need to do. Now, depending on how much work you want to assign or how much work you think the kids should do, like we've talked about that before, we have, we look at a whole kind of monthly, weekly schedule. So there's not you have to get this amount done in a day, but you can tie their performance and how much they get done, the attitude that they have, into things like screen time. If your kid can't wait to get back on TikTok, or is looking to get on social media, or just has a television show that they're looking forward to binging, link their ability and how they handle the school day to their access to those things. You'll find that they can really motivate themselves and dial in when they know that when they do it correctly, or when they do accomplish whatever amount of work that you set in front of them or set for them to do, that they can get the things that they want, you'll find they'll develop a little bit more of a self-motivation to get it done.
And I think if you allow the kids to know that, they can take a break, it's not you must do this in this time, because giving them freedom helps the self-motivation. Because if your child has been at school all of these years, they may lack self-motivation because they're used to being told what to do and when to do it. So you're having to change that. You're having to change what they have grown to know as their model. So that's going to take a little while to get them out of that.
And that takes us into our second point, giving them a little bit more ownership of it. As we've mentioned in previous videos, it's hard to love something that you don't own. And when you're used to, as Nicole was just saying, when you're used to having to wait to be told what to do step by step, imagine that mindset that's being instilled in the child. Now you want to give them an opportunity to say, hey, if you aren't self-motivated to do the things that you're told to do, how about what do you want to do? What do you want to do first? Understanding what needs to be done, what do you want to do first, and what order do you want to approach it in? Mm-hmm. We're not going to tell you what to do as far as what order. We're going to let you know what we expect to be done, what needs to be done, and then we're going to allow you to come up with a plan on how you want to accomplish it.
Right.
When they can own that plan, it's easier for them to own the learning process and then be a self-learner.
And you might, as a parent, have to show them how to make this plan. You give an example. So, ask them, what would you prefer to do first? And then they tell you, say, okay, well, let's write this down. So this is what you'll do first. And then, show them how to plan. Because if they're used to the teacher having planned their curriculum for years or for months, that's what they're used to. So you're having to reteach these skills.
Or just the thought process and the approach. Once again, this is all part of the Amy approach to educating your child. We're big believers in instilling that ownership of their education. You understand what you want to do in life. With our children, we talk to them about what they want to accomplish, what they want to do in life, and here's what it takes. So how are you going to go about accomplishing what it takes to accomplish the goals that you have in life? And this is what we encourage you to all sit down with your children and plan this out and think about this when it comes to the remainder of the time that you're going to be homeschooling them. whether it's for the rest of the school year. Some of you might even decide that this works better for our family. And then another point to make to that is, once again, modeling the behavior. As Nicole mentioned, the child was able to come over and look at our children and model their behavior. In your home, you're going to be the model. A lot of you are working from home now. So establishing that environment, once again, this is the environment here where we're serious, we're focused, and we're accomplishing things. So if you have, maybe you set up your office, this is the office and the classroom because this is the serious area. Our creativity area is over in the family room. Or we have the den where you can go and you can work on this type of environment. So you can play a huge part in setting the right tone and setting the right example by how you control the environments in the house. Keep that in mind and model that behavior. If they see you on screens all day, guess they're going to want to be.
Right.
They're going to want to be on screen. So you have to show them what work looks like in the house.
And if they see you reading, they'll want to read.
They'll want to read. That's one of the easiest ways to get your child to read. Mm-hmm. Sit down and read a book all day. Even if you're reading for work, they won't know that. They'll see you reading a book. So, hey, it's reading time. We're reading as a family. Okay? And the next difficulty that I want to address, because I want to start, wrapping this up so we can get close to our 15-minute timeline. This is a question from one of my classmates at the academy, and she was wondering, how do you balance when you have kids at different ages, at different levels, that learn differently? How do you manage that in the house? Like I mentioned before, we only have 2 children. They're not that far apart in age, but they are 2 completely different learners. Completely different. But for those of you who have, maybe you have a large age gap. Maybe you have some high schoolers and elementary schoolers, or you have some middle schoolers and elementary schoolers. The first thing that we would advise that you do is work on the mastery level for your older children by having them spending time tutoring and assisting the younger children. For the most part, your older children should know what the younger children are covering. And if they don't, this is a great time for them to have a refresher. If they do, it's a great time for them to work on mastering those things, because it's 3 levels. You can learn how to repeat something. You can learn how to do something on your own with your own thought, and then learning how to teach something. When you can teach something, you are now a master. So utilize that difference to your advantage by letting your older children work on that mastery level by assisting your younger children as they go through the curriculum. And then ideally, your older children should be able to complete their work at a faster rate so they can take that necessary time out of their day to get themselves refreshed and work on the mastery level before they then move into their own curriculum and their own schoolwork. Right. Because once again, this isn't taking all day anymore because you're at home.
Right. And, if you need to, you might be able to work with the kids at different times of the day. Maybe one child likes to sleep a little later, one likes to get up. Usually, younger kids like to get up earlier. Older kids like to get up a little later. So, you can just make the morning hours. If you need to go over something and teach something, change the hours. Our kids have different learning styles. One learns better when something is written, when they're writing it. Another learns better when from just reading something or even speaking about it. So, then you identify how the child learns best, but, you don't stick to that because, of course, you want your child to be a multimodal learner. So use different methods, but identify which way they retain information the best and let them go with that.
Definitely let them go with that. Now that your child is not confined to the school model, you can really allow the education to mold around your child instead of your child having to fit into the system. And this is critical, and this is a benefit of what you're having to go through right now, is to allow your child this opportunity to really let education mold around who they are, what type of learner they are, and what their interests are. Right. You're going to find that you make a lot more advancements that way.
And then you'll have even a more confident child because they might feel like in the way the school is teaching them that maybe they can't be successful. But when you get them at home and you're able to identify how they learn best and work with that, then they'll feel, okay, I can learn. They just have to identify, I just learn differently.
I just learned differently. Or even, your children, they're all different. Some of your children, they're morning people, some are afternoon people. If you know you have a child that's a morning person, that's the time to take that energy, take that focus in the morning to maybe cover the more difficult things when they have that focus versus a child who even though they're up and they're moving, they're not awake until 1. So why not wait till 1 to cover the things that they need to have their most attention and focus on? These are all things that you control now that you're in the homeschooling. It's a beautiful thing. So we want to we have one more question that we wanted to touch on, and then our next lesson we'll talk a little bit more about taking the next steps and not just getting the curriculum done, but how do you enhance it? How do you make it better? But that will be for our next video. Our last thought for this video is we want to share with you, we had a question on how do you go about setting up the homeschool process, and the person who asked us the question was in Texas. Now, there are plenty of resources as homeschooling is a growing, popular kind of thing in education now. There are plenty of resources online where you can go and you can find out exactly what your state and what your county demands or requires of you in order to be a homeschooling parent. We, in California, we went through 2 separate processes. When we first started off, we were
private school, homeschool through the state. You just have to file an application, let the state know that you are a private school. And as a private school, you can homeschool your child.
So we were able to do that. We did that for a couple of years, and then we actually found a charter school that focuses and is for homeschooling families and parents. So we are currently enrolled in a homeschooling charter school that pretty much gives us access to resources that we are able to try and sample and figure out what works best for our children, and also have an educational counselor that we touch bases with. She recommends different curriculums based off of her knowledge and her experience with the children and where they are academically.
And then they keep records, and then you can have your child take school pictures.
And you can do testing if you want to. But that's here in California. Every state has their own laws, and one of the things that Amy Educational Advocates can do is can work with you in a consulting fashion to help you determine what it takes in your state to get you properly aligned and properly set up to homeschool your children. But there are resources out there, there are websites out there that will guide you in the right direction. One of them is the Homeschool
Legal Defense Association, and they have lists of different states. They're through all the states, and they list what's necessary to homeschool in different states. I think there's a small fee because if something happens, they will come and give you legal defense.
Yeah. So that's just one of the resources that are out there. There's plenty, depending on what state you are. I think Texas actually has some of the more lax rules because Texas is, a big free state for the most part. So they have more lax rules, I believe, when it comes to homeschooling, your ability to homeschool your child.
And then sometimes it seems like even in the South, some of the, they'll have like the Nassau, they have homeschooling programs, like I think Alabama, Texas, those NASA areas.
And we'll cover more of those as we talk about enhancing your homeschooling process. We went a little bit over this morning. This evening, we're close to the 20-minute mark. Hopefully you found this information helpful. We look forward to continue to provide you with more education as you continue on your journey into the homeschooling world. Once again, I'm the coach, Ty A.
And I'm Nicole A.
Love you much.
Take care.
Peace.
Happy homeschool.